So how many of you were here this morning for the early session and heard me speak? Okay, most of you. So what you heard is that this book I just gave her, you can all get for free. So I decided to have one book I self-published. Let me tell you, it's not easy self-publishing. I have another talk about self-publishing, and I'm happy to talk to folks at 3:15. I guess at 3:15 I have an open discussion, but it was a lot of work getting indexers, proofreaders, copy editors, editors. My son did the graphic design, so the cover actually, my son Alex did the cover of this one. And it was a lot of work, but I promised people in the Philippines that my next book would be free, because in 2011 I went to the Philippines and the publisher charged twice the US prices there. And they sent only 2 books to the whole conference of 1,000 people, so I said my next book will be free. So that's part of the reason I made it free. It's an experiment. And like I said this morning, over 60,000 people have downloaded it. So it's, from that standpoint, it's a good experiment. But there are pros and cons to self-publishing. It's not an easy decision. For me, it was very, very expensive because I wanted the high quality as I could. Publishing on Amazon CreateSpace is one of the most enjoyable things I ever did in my life. Those people at Amazon CreateSpace are wonderful answering your questions and support. I can definitely say that I was not expecting that, and they always said, do you have any more issues that we can help you with? So extremely helpful folks. Amazon has something called CreateSpace as a subsidiary doing self-publishing. They bought something called BookSurge and changed the name. So that's why you may have heard of the name BookSurge about 5 years ago, and so it's now called CreateSpace. There are other self-publishing entities, one called Lulu you may have heard of. There's another one called Lightning Source that apparently is even better than Amazon, my friends have told me. So anyways, a little side. So this book is basically what I'm going to go through are activities that are, some are discussed in the book, some are so new they're not even in the book because the book came out a year ago and everything changes. So you'll hear some things that are, but the book is organized so that each chapter can stand alone. So a chapter on tone or climate, if you want to know how to create a class for a safe, inviting tone, that's chapter 4. If you want engagement, that's another chapter. So engagement, let's see if I can get this. Oh, I thought I put this in here, but maybe it's not quite. I'll try this one here. That's trying it now. Let's see if it can. It's probably. Again. I didn't test the clicker. We didn't have a lot of time to test, but let's see if I can get it to. Eventually it will go. So, engage. So Confucius said that, teacher, respect the teacher, we got this expert knowledge, all this stuff. And then we had Plato and Aristotle with vineyards of Academos, and we had, Rip Van Winkle, where people said, you could, in all 3 scenarios, people said you could wake up, in this case 250 years later, he fell asleep before the Revolutionary War, woke up after it, his wife had died, his dog had died, all sorts of things, but yet schools look the same. And people said that, Plato and Aristotle could show up today and schools would look the same. And people said Confucius could show up today and schools would look the same. But I think they're wrong. And if you were at my talk this morning, you saw me walk through 30 different technology changes, ways in which learning is changing. And I'm still trying to get this. It is working. Okay, great. It's just a little slow. There we go. Great. Back to Confucius. It's just a little bit behind me. But so many things are going on simultaneously, it gets confusing. So what I've done in this book is try to create a framework to make sense of what's going on, to try and help you. And when I was in Japan a year and a half ago, I filmed some students. As you can see, they're all sleeping, In Japan, you pass your cram school and then you go to university and you can sleep for 4 years. There are tools that are now helping us track sleeping students that don't finish our courses. There's a company that aggregates data and finds at-risk students in your class and points out students who are at risk. So data for administrators and teachers. There's also companies out there creating tools to help the learner side. There's a couple tools that will help you focus, and they'll help you focus so you're not off task doing distractive things. Like I like to go to ESPN.com and get sports scores and things like that. So this will point out how much time you spend. There's a tool out there that will point out how much time you spend on distracting kinds of things. And they block sites that you set up sites to block so that you don't go off to these distracting things and you focus your energies. So anyhow, my model, the TEC-VARIETY model, is not doing either of those things. It's set up to try and help inspire learners, to help set up so that you have people engage in learning, like this gentleman here. He was 16 years old when he learned 16 languages. He learned Farsi, he learned Chinese, he learned Italian, he learned Spanish, he learned all sorts of languages through the internet, through watching television shows that were broadcast and saved, through online grammar tools and online flashcards and all sorts of technologies. He also learned through print media as well. But how can we get more people to approach learning and push into the learning environment as opposed to being dictated to learn and being monitored from a more behavioral point of focus? Whoops.
Engage.
How can we get people to engage in the learning process?
Engage.
Thank you, Jean-Luc.
Here's the plan. We get the warhead and we hold the world ransom for
$1 million.
$1 million.
So I've got some $1 million with me from Obama that wasn't spent on the stimulus package. And my question for you is, what words come to mind when I say motivation? What words come to mind when I say motivation?
Enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm. You might say fun, fantasy, enthusiasm, okay? Passion, right? What words come to mind when I say motivation? Reward, number 2 in the list, reward, yeah. Monetary reward, she got rewarded, okay? A behavioral kind of an approach. What other words come to mind? Engage, number 8 on the list. I kind of gave that one away earlier, a few little slides. So engage, passion, rewards, inspire, goals, number 10 on the list, really important one, inspire throughout the whole list. What else is missing? Interaction, number 7 on the list, thank you. And there are many ways to interact. There's student-student interaction, student-instructor interaction, student-self, reflection, student-expert, might bring in an expert from the outside, student-content interaction. Steve?
The idea of preparation and not phoning in what you're doing. You have to be engaged as the educator.
Okay, you also have to be engaged, not just the student being engaged, but there's also engagement as part of the instructors modeling what's going on, showcasing what you want students to do. You can pass that back to him. I'll trip otherwise. So there are many ways to think about motivation in an online space. Jerry Brophy at Michigan State summarized his 20 years of research, and Jerry Brophy recently died, but this is what he came up with in terms of motivational principles and descriptors. Goals you mentioned, rewards you've mentioned, challenge no one mentioned, meaningfulness no one mentioned, variety and fun, I mentioned some of that, products, goals kind of ties together, enthusiasm you mentioned, feedback, that gets back at rewards sort of, feedback. These are all aspects of motivation, okay? So what I've tried to do in my book is to look at those, especially from an intrinsic motivation point of view, and think about how we can get students to seek their own volition, their own goals, find their own passions, find their meaningful learning avenues. And I came up with 10 principles of motivation based on what Jerry Brophy's research and many other psychologists' research over the decades. There are many others, Barbara McCombs, Lynn Corno, and others. And I came up with this list of 10. And they happen to spell TEC-VARIETY if you combine them. There's actually 40 words if you cut across all these. It's actually 40 motivational principles. So what I've tried to do in the book is give 10 ideas for each of the 10, or 100 total. Now the book that Heidi showed us It also has 100 ideas, but it has a different model I'll go through in the second part after our break. And so I have 2 books with 100 ideas in them. I'm going to write one more. It's not going to be like either of these two. It's going to be more free-flowing. These are, you can open up any page and find an idea in there that you might want to try and use. So I'm going to walk through and give you a couple examples of each one of these, of enthusiasm. You know, I worked with, I don't know if Larry knows this, I worked with B.F. Skinner's daughter and son-in-law at West Virginia University before coming to Indiana, and they were very much on number 2, the responsive support side, feedback side. I also worked with a guy who worked with Arthur Coombs, who was a humanist who believed in, you know, safe climate, comfort, belongingness, Abraham Maslow. You can also look at Thomas Malone in the gaming literature. The gaming literature is full of fantasy, control, fun. You can look at Roger Schenck talking about goal-based scenarios, case-based learning, number 10. Moving, Seymour Papert, I mentioned this morning, building stuff, maker movement, that's number 10. There's different aspects or different psychologists. Piaget, number 9, are tension, challenge, being in dissonance, disequilibrium, pushing people so that they don't know something if they want to explore it, pushing them into a challenge, in effect. So there are different psychologists behind each of these different principles that are there. So that's my book, the TEC-VARIETY book, and you can download each chapter separately or the whole book. And it's in Chinese now, but I don't see anyone from China here. But we just had it come out in China, and I spoke at the end of June. My second last talk was at the Open U of China. The Open U of China has 3.5 million students. It's a big place. But it's, you know, it's open university concepts are different. People go at their own pace and their own time, and, you know, not everybody graduates and so forth. But the biggest Open U is in India, of course, Indira Gandhi Open University. Indira Gandhi Open University has 100,000 MBA students each year. Each cohort is 100,000. They have over 5 million students, I think, or something like that. But anyways, they've helped translate the book along with Beijing Normal, and they're going to sell a print version in China, but they're also going to give away the PDF. So that's the Chinese characters. I know we have one person from Korea. So it's not in Korean yet, although as I mentioned, my son's from Korea, and he did the book cover for the book. I hope my friends from Korea can translate it soon. So in the book, we list each strategy from the standpoint of time, risk, or cost. And we emphasize low risk, low cost, low time. If you remember the movie, What About Bob? With Bill Murray and who's the psychologist in the movie? Does anyone remember that movie, What About Bob? Where Bill Murray's told to take what's that, Richard Dreyfuss? Yeah. And Bill Murray's taking baby steps. Well, in some ways, this book is about taking small steps. Low risk, low cost, low time. Some people already are experimenting. I'm sure my friends from Korea, which high-tech people, they're doing a lot of interesting things. What's your discipline? IT, and your adult training workforce. I'm sure they're doing a lot already. And they might be on the high end of the risk continuum. My Air Force instructor, he might be somewhere in the middle somewhere, doing blended learning in some ways and supplementing learning with blended learning. Steve's nodding his head yes. So some examples of the TEC-VARIETY model. Number 1, tone or climate. There's a tool from the University of Minnesota called Flipgrid. Now, Flipgrid was free. This is the only tool I'm going to point out that is no longer free. Everything else I'm going to show you is free. I start with it because it's kind of a fun tool. And I've used it as an icebreaker for conferences. I've used it as an icebreaker with my students. You know, when you teach a class, you often have an icebreaker that they type in their hobbies. With Flipgrid, they talk and videotape themselves for 1 minute. So it's a video thread tool. It's a nice little tool. And we had a discussion. You post questions. There's question cards, cue cards, and you respond with a video explanation. It's kind of a nice little tool. And it's built by a friend of mine at University of Minnesota named Charlie Miller. And Charlie just got a lot of venture capital to build this out even more, and he quit his tenured job. I wrote him a tenure letter. I got him tenure, and he quit this spring. He got $17 million to make Flipgrid even better. But it's used by a lot of schools. All around. A lot of kids are using this one. Tone or safety. So I have my students point out their hobbies, their interests, what's their favorite music. There's actually a website you can go for royalty-free music and have people post their, it's just an icebreaker. What's your favorite song kind of thing? And so, these are, by the way, all these are posted to the web. You can download these slides and use them how you want. You can find your favorite places to live or visit with a tool called Panoramio. You might pick, I went to Iceland about 10 years ago. I pulled some pictures of Iceland. I was just in China. I've been to different places. Seoul, Korea is one of my favorite places to visit. And so I might pick that, and then we can have an icebreaker about that. Toner Climate can also include instructor introductions. Our Kelly Online MBA program has all the faculty introduce themselves with a short video explaining who they are, what their courses are like, and that kind of thing. This has become pervasive. Now, I don't know if we have an internet connection here, but this gentleman here, Chuck Severance, and I'm going to try something that will be a little bit on the risk-taking side. I have no clue if this is going to blow up or not. I have not tested this, and sometimes you have to try. Chuck is, he's got a chapter in my new book, and he goes around the world meeting his students from his online class.
College is a great adventure. Figuring out how to pay for it responsibly can feel overwhelming, but it doesn't happen.
So here's Chuck.
Hello everybody, here we are in Barcelona at office hours, and I'd like to introduce some of the students in Internet History Technology for the very first time it was taught. So here we are. Hang on. So, hi. Your name?
Octavio.
Okay. And you feel free to say something if you want to your fellow students.
Well, this has been nice, Chuck and all the partners in the course. Nice to meet you.
Okay.
Hi, this is Magda Martinez. It's lovely to take courses at Recaro, and I hope you take it too.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Hannah, and thank you for the opportunity.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Daniel. I loved it, so enjoyed the courses.
Hello, I am Ivan. I'm happy to be here with Dr. Chuck and my fellow students.
Hello, my name is Andre, and I love the course, and I hope to have many more like this. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Charlie, and I think it's a very good course.
Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you everybody. Oh, here comes some more traffic.
So that's Dr. Chuck teaching he's teaching a course on, he's got a free course on Python programming, another a course for teachers called Programming for Everybody. He teaches a course for like high school and college teachers on how to program. And he does it free using Coursera. And he travels, he does keynotes all over, and he'll meet his students in a cafe and have office hours. So it's a totally different idea of office hours than any. I just thought I'd show that. It's kind of pushing the edges out there, but it might get you to think about course introductions as students. And we have more capabilities, storing video, recording video. Now, you're using Desire to Learn here. At Indiana, we use something called OnCourse. It was part of something called Sakai. And Larry may remember the Sakai. We have a free open source course management system. He was in charge of that. So Michigan, Indiana, Stanford, and MIT built the Sakai tool, and he was the executive director of that for a while. So he's a pretty well-known guy, and that's why so many people sign up for his class. He has 40,000 students in his class. I gave the commencement talk a couple of years ago from his office. That was kind of fun to do. Encouragement or feedback, number 2. This woman at Indiana every week has a tutorial or a sharing video of a new technology IU is adopting. So she's encouraging faculty, showing them, doing a demo of a new tool. There are tools today that will let you capture the screen, called screen capturing tools, where if you're using a software package, you can talk as you explore the software and capture the screen to give your students instructions on how to use that software. These tools are very inexpensive or free. Free ones include Jing, Screener, GoView. They're called screen capturing. You just wear a little headset, click play or record, and click stop. You send the students the link, and they get a free tutorial. So encouraging them into your class. There's also a tool that's called Recaro. Now Recaro, here's a little thing I recorded in China. Let's just see if this will work here. So I was in China. I just recorded my voice and.
Hello, friends at the Open University of China. I really hope you're enjoying this talk today, June 25th, 2015, and appreciating all the tools like Recaro.
So I could record my voice right now. If this has a recording, I don't know. I haven't been in this room. But yeah, it doesn't have a recording tool. But you can sit there, just click record, and you stop recording. Basically what Recaro lets you do is give voice feedback to students. Instead of typing and your hand getting sore, then you give them a link and they get your voice feedback. So feedback can come from the instructor to the students, but feedback can also go the other direction and students giving you feedback. Encouragement or feedback can also take place through self-testing. At Indiana, one of our anatomy professors, Catherine O'Loughlin, she has a website on human embryology. And students can take her practice exams before taking the real exam in class. And my daughter took her class one summer. She went to Butler University in the summer. She came to Indiana to take classes. And, Dad, look at all these animations and self-tests. I knew all about them because she had spoken to my class. So yeah, kids get excited to know that they know the content before going into the exam. And so there was a guy at Penn State created a muscular system self-test that he put up on the web, and in December last year, over 200,000 students around the world used it, not just his students in his class. So self-testing is very, very, very prominent. You can also get feedback from you to the instructor. There are tools out there that will let you poll your students. You've heard of Zoomerang and SurveyMonkey. I actually created something called Survey Share at one point. There are polling tools like Poll Everywhere where students can take a poll for free on their mobile devices as you lecture, and the results can go up on the screen. Poll Everywhere, Blog Poll, and other tools to get instant audience feedback. Curiosity, fun, and games. The gentleman this morning mentioned sending a man to the moon, JFK's speech of sending a man to the moon. I forgot I even had this slide in my talk, but you can get your students to link historical events by finding online news. In this case, this is a news picture from 40, 50 some years ago, 54 years ago, 1961. Kennedy sent a man to the moon. I was trying to get my students to reflect on this particular piece of the news with what was happening today in terms of educational technology and sending people into the internet. So historical events, get them aroused by historical events. You can also, if you teach, anyone teach physical fitness, health, nutrition in here? The gentleman on the right-hand side there, at age 101 last year, ran his last marathon. He started running marathons at age 80. When his family had all died, he started running marathons. And so if you teach fitness and you talk about, someone like this, getting your students, again, excited, curious about something in the news. When I was in China, I had this piece of the news about Chinese world rankings I put in my talk. Because all the Chinese universities want to be top 100 in the world now, Same with the Korean ones. And yeah, question?
Use like a search box, you put the topic you want, and it pulls it up?
Yeah, I find different things. I track CNN, the BBC, and other news sources for this kind of, and my friends send me things. It's a combination. I purposely search. If I'm going to speak to nursing faculty, I'll look for nursing examples. In a couple weeks, I'll speak to accounting people. I'm going to have so I search purposefully for cases, for podcasts, for news, all sorts of things. In Hong Kong, I spoke to performing arts people for the first time ever, opera people, dance people, and so you'll see some examples in here of what I found. I spent almost a half a day looking, and I found some things. Now, if you teach paleontology, every week there's a new dinosaur being discovered. And this is a Korean professor here explaining one dinosaur. This guy actually found a dinosaur that looks like Jar Jar Binks from Star Wars, okay? And this guy found the dinosaur, the most intact, massive dinosaur ever discovered. And so you can take a look at them. There's the Jar Jar Binks kind of dinosaur. This really exists, or existed at one point in time. And like I said, every day there's something in the news. In every discipline, there's something in the news to inspire people. And after that, the world's longest neck dinosaur was found in January. So it seems like every week there's something new being discovered in the world of dinosaurs. This is a news capture of the world's oldest photograph with a human being in it. So if you teach photography or media or film or journalism, Do you see the gentleman getting his shoe shine there? Maybe I need to blow that up a little bit so you can see him a little bit better. Come on. Oh. Maybe I don't have the, there's a little bigger picture of that so you can see that's the world's oldest photograph of the human being from Paris in 1838. Okay? How about getting excited about computer science? Biography.com has a biography of Leda Lovelace, the first woman who wrote the first computer program with recursion back in the 1800s. It has a biography of Steve Jobs. What Steve Jobs has is also videos of experts explaining his life. So getting people curious by going to biography.com or famouspeople.com or there's actually some websites for famous women and women in science and other things to inspire people. So of these ideas so far, did anyone strike you as something you might use? Flipgrid, video introductions, demonstrations and tutorials, voice feedback with Recaro, practice tests, something in the news, tracking the life of a scientist. Has anyone got one idea from that list they might try? Raise your hands if you got an idea. How about 2 or more ideas from the list? Okay. Anyone in particular that struck you as useful? Anyone? Yeah?
The voice audio feedback was really interesting.
Voice audio feedback, giving them some, yeah.
I usually, for example, I teach research and writing, and then when I want to give feedback,
Yeah.
sometimes it takes a long time to write feedback
Yeah.
to students, and that's very time consuming.
Yep.
It's a kind of boring job too, but students, I'm pretty sure,
Yep.
when I give the feedback to students about their writing, students are like, usually do not read those comments.
Yep.
But when there's a voice, it must be very interesting.
Now, if you combine it with short writing and a voice on top, and then you say, you know, someone looked up, you can have unlimited length. Whereas with the screen grabbing tools, the free ones, like Jing and Screener, they're limited to 10 minutes. But still, 10 minutes is a long time in some ways, right? Let's look at some more. So number 4 is variety or novelty, something different, something new. This gentleman here is totally different. He's 96 years old. He teaches a famous Chinese instrument using video conferencing. He's from Vietnam. If I said China, I meant Vietnam. And as you can see here, he's got interactive video conferencing sessions with students around the world to teach this ancient instrument. It's still being used today. They actually use this in China. We had a demonstration there. Variety and novelty. There's a website where you can randomize things. So I might randomize the order of student presentations. I might randomize my lecture so I'm not delivering the lecture in the same sequence. In fact, last year I taught a class in reverse, from the last module to the first module. And I was much fresher. I had a lot more passion. I wasn't teaching it the same way over and over again. So randomizing tool also has a coin flipping tool to decide maybe who goes first or second. It has a random number generator, maybe to match up with student presentation order. Randomize things, so you're not picking on the students. The computer picked you to go first. Okay. Number 5, autonomy and choice. This is a student I had this past spring, and this is actually a sister of a student of mine who's using an idea I might use. There's a new idea called 20% time, based on Daniel Pink's book, Drive. In Drive, Daniel Pink describes Google and other companies who give their employees 20% time to create and do whatever they want. And so Google Calendar, Google Toolbar, Gmail, and many tools at Google were created by employees with 20% free time. As faculty at Indiana, we get 1 day a week to consult or do what, it's 20% time. And so there's a big push today to explore this notion of giving students 20% time to do what they want. And I might research this, actually. And my students did a video on it. The person in this picture is a geography teacher at Virginia Tech who's gotten known. He's been featured in the Chronicle of Higher Education for using 20% time. This teacher is from Noblesville, Indiana. He's got a new book called Pure Genius, which I actually think I brought with me, if I'm not mistaken. I can actually show this. I'm not positive if I've got his book, but I think I brought it with me. Anyhow, his book, Pure Genius, is one that's getting a lot of publicity lately, and I wrote to him, he's going to come talk to my students. He just was in our, Larry, you might recognize, he was in our chalkboard this month, this gentleman here in the School of Ed. He's a teacher who's letting students get 20% time to innovate, to create, to do things, okay? And he's trying to get more project-based learning going on in his classrooms. Autonomy and choice. One thing I tested out this semester in what we call P540, which Larry knows very well, learning theories class, I told my students, you can substitute the midterm assignment by writing a paper on a class of somebody else. If you sat in on a MOOC of another learning theory class of another person somewhere else, you could write a reflection paper and that could be your midterm. If you finish the class, it can replace your final and you write a reflection on that. So having students maybe go to online presentations, online courses, online conferences. How many conferences today have an online component where the keynote is recorded? You can find ways they might watch the keynote, write a reflection paper on it, maybe list a couple of choices. So choice, give them a choice of what they want to go to. I gave my students 20 different courses they could go to. And here are a bunch of them. There's a website called Class Central, which lists courses. So here are different course topics. These are courses in filmmaking, courses in education. This is going kind of courses in history, courses in creativity from Stanford, courses from Arizona State in programming, courses in Mandarin Chinese, voice recording, writing, creative writing, gaming and literacy. There's just tons of different free classes out there. Another option I gave them is to go to a series of webinars on higher education and how it's changing. There were a series of webinars offered by this woman, Kathy Davidson from New York University, or City College of New York, and a gentleman from Kansas State named Michael Resch. There are many others they could pick from, but giving them a choice to attend a webinar, go to an online conference. One of my students told me, Dr. Bonk, your course is too easy. I don't want to do a final assignment of a glossary of 100 words. I want to do a multimedia glossary. And so she did. She created a multimedia glossary. She's from Uzbekistan, working in one of our centers at Indiana. She created a multimedia glossary which had theorists in psychology you could go and explore, and videos of classical conditioning and Pavlov and Piaget. She had a video glossary where not only did she have the words, but you could click on any of these, working memory, social learning, situated learning, and you get a video explaining it. She didn't want to just do a glossary of words. She wanted news, people, theorists, resources, conferences. She created what I'm calling a multimedia glossary. And I have other students who did that as well. Another guy named Oscar, he did one. He's from Turkey. He's my doc student. He did one for one of my classes related to a different topic, emerging learning technologies, same kind of thing. He also had book links, glossary links, adventure learning, whatever topic was. He had pictures with each term. So multimedia glossaries. You may not be aware of, but there's a new development in the US called the Digital Public Library of America. The Digital Public Library of America is a consortium of libraries. They're trying to create one big library of media, photos, pictures, text, and you can search on a topic, whatever the topic is, and you get a timeline of different artifacts that come up that you can explore on that interactive timeline. It's something you might want to take a look at your own leisure. But it's dp.la. Very simple. Digital Public Library of America, just dp.la. So any light bulbs going off? Anyone got ideas so far? Anyone want to share an idea? I've got about 10 minutes left or so. I'll go through the other half. There's a lot more here. Yeah.
I'm with Purpose at our undergraduate research and creative activities.
Yeah.
And we do a forum in the spring. And there's over 200 judges.
Wow.
So it's a lot of organization to
Yeah.
get the sheets all organized and matched up and just add up the students' points because there's a winner.
Yeah.
So we've been trying to think of a way to digitalize the judging. And I was thinking SurveyMonkey,
Yeah, it could. SurveyMonkey, Sumerang. You might also use wikis of some kind. Your wiki kind of tool to crowdsource give everyone's feedback on one form, who are the judges, and have them, work together in some ways. If you wanted to be public, if you wanted anonymous, then use the survey tool. So it depends how public you want or how private you want the judging to be. I'll talk to you afterwards. We have a break here coming up. That's interesting. Number 6 should be coming up here. I clicked the button. Come on. Relevance and meaningfulness. So this past spring, I used Adobe Connect, and I brought students back to my class. This is Emily Hickson. She came around 1997 to the EdSci program, Emily Hickson here. She's now at Purdue Calumet. She came in to talk to my class. And I also had Miguel Laura, who came from Mexico and now is at Cal State Monterey Bay. I had Jiyun Lee coming from Korea, who's now my visiting scholar. Her whole family's in Indiana. A guy from Hong Kong who just finished. He brought me to Hong Kong. And John Savory, who got our Outstanding Dissertation Award back in 1997. He came back in from Ohio, Coast Guard, and all sorts of people. Another one from Korea. They talked about what they learned in the class, what they got from the class, and how they're applying the class. So students could see them, that the content was relevant to them. And every week I had a different person come in for a little chat. Relevance and meaningfulness can also come through case-based learning. You can have cases that you might watch and reflect on. In this case, they're teaching dance. And in this case, Mark Brunn is a pathology professor at IU. And he has 50-some cases of health conditions or problems that students go through. A man with a chest pain, a woman with a cough, someone with a woman with a lump in her breast, but nose is bleeding. And the students have to read the content, the protein count, the heart rate, the blood pressure readings, and make decisions about what to do. First-year medical students going through these cases. At Indiana, I was doing pre-service teacher cases back in the 1990s, having teachers talk about case problems in schools and solving cases. We had students from around the world helping solve each other's problems. We had students at Indiana, students in Finland, students in Korea, at Kyunghee University, students in Peru, all crowdsourcing answers. Number 7, collaboration. There are wiki tools today that let you work together, as I mentioned this morning. Pirate Pad being one I mentioned, meeting words where everyone's comments can be a different color in the document, and we share ideas. So sometimes I use these tools to write a grant proposal with my colleagues, or I'll write a conference abstract, and everyone's contribution's a different color. Rather than everyone sending a Word document all around, we just have one website we just keep adding ideas to. And these are tools that might be good for team projects, collaborative groups, things like that. There's also walls where you can share sticky note kinds of things, or ideas, or images. This tool is called Padlet. This is one I've not used, but I have many friends who, actually I can't say I've never used, I contributed to this one, but I've not used it as my class. Someone had a Padlet on how they engage students, and they brought in people from around the world to post how they engage their students. It's kind of an interesting topic. But it's like a wall where you're just posting things on a given topic. Interactive and collaborative might mean a synchronous session, as I mentioned this morning. So here again, we're using Google Hangouts to have a discussion after we had a presentation, after a lecture, after a guest lecture or my lecture. We reflect in Google Hangouts on the concepts and what we learned, what we didn't learn. Skype, how many of you use Skype? You've seen Skype? Well, apparently the tool that we're adopting in Indiana called Zoom is a lot like Skype, only better, or Google Hangouts. So I'll see. I'm going to test it out during the coming week. Here I've got a guy named Jay Cross who has a book on informal learning. And I brought him into my class over Google Hangouts from Berkeley, California. Now, Jay's also known as the person who coined the word e-learning back in the 1990s. He's a pretty well-known guy. He has a website called the Internet Time Blog. He's more in the corporate space. He's not a professor, but he's written a couple of books. So these ideas, student-created multimedia glossaries, who might use that? Just curious, anybody? A couple of you might use that. Online cases. Again, 20% time learning. That's a more risky one. Negotiating meanings using Pirate Pad or one of these meeting words or wiki kinds of things. Enroll in a MOOC. or discussions in Google Hangouts or Skypes. Okay, let's go on to some other ones. Number 8, engagement. We got a couple minutes left before break. Boston College or Boston University or Boston College last year created a James Joyce book, or digitized a James Joyce book called The Dubliners. And The Dubliners is about a car race, apparently back in the early 1900s. And they added multimedia annotations, expert commentary, pictures, videos. Books today are becoming e-purpose, so you can not just read the book, you can explore things, wrap around things around the book. And that's a trend that's going to happen to make learning more engaging, to get students not just to be reading or clicking pages, but to go into more depth. And you might actually offer depth for what's happening, I think, and what I've read is that the students that want to learn more, that are the higher end learners, are going in deeper into these books and commentary. But are they changing the book so much that it's no longer James Joyce's book? You know, are they adding so much to it that you're losing his meaning? That's a question to ask. Engagement, virtual tours. A couple weeks ago, a week and a half ago, I was on the web and all of a sudden someone had been in North Korea. And I wanted to get to North Korea. I actually probably would never get to North Korea. But I've been intrigued by it. My father was in the Korean War. My son's from Korea. I've been there. Most of my friends, a lot of my friends are there. They posted a 3D. Someone from Singapore went there and was interacting with military people with his mobile phone and showing them virtual tours. They were playing games on his mobile device. And then they let him film above the city, the capital city of Pyongyang. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And there you get some amazing shots that I never saw before. It's fascinating. And then he went and talked to people on the streets and went to a pizza place. And he went to the subway station, which is apparently a pretty incredible place in the capital. And you look at traffic, look at the cars people are driving, and look at the wedding ceremonies taking place. There's a lot I learned from one article in CNN. I learned more about North Korea from one article in CNN than I had from a decade of reading other things. So it's kind of interesting. I got engaged. So I guess my point is that you can engage people with virtual tours, with online information, online news, and all sorts of things. Intercultural learning, getting students to talk to folks in another part of the world. I've had my students meet students from Malaysia or meet students from China and have interactive classes where we might read the same content and have joint discussions, so intercultural collaboration kinds of things. In this case, it's students at York University in Toronto and students in Thailand talking. It's an example there. Simulations, whether it's chemistry simulations or physics, ways to engage people, try things out, manipulate variables. Guest speakers. This gentleman here is well known for his research on social media. He researches Facebook and Twitter, and it was at the Harvard Berkman Institute. I asked him to come to my class, and he was about to move to Purdue and work in the libraries there, and now he's at Iowa State. He said, I have no time. I'm moving to Purdue. I don't have any time. I said, don't worry. We'll create a talk for you. I had my students read his research, find images, graphs, charts, and diagrams. We created a PowerPoint slide deck of his research. And I had them find quotes of his quotes, and we put his quotes down here in the chat window. He could respond to any quote. He could respond to any image of his research and talk about his research, or he could say pass. If he didn't want to talk about it, just say pass. He had nothing to prepare. It was one of the most interactive, engaging sessions I've ever had. Okay? Another interactive and engaging session I had once was when I had Elliot Soloway from Michigan talk to my class after they read his article on the effects of computer programming on thinking. My students hated his article. We brought him in live for a synchronous class. They liked everything he had to say. After hating on discussion forums, they didn't like, all of a sudden they were going like this. So async first, and then synchronous. There's a famous instructional designer named David Merrill. I don't know if Larry, you know David Merrill, the name. He's one of the most well-known from Utah State. And we brought him in after they discussed. They didn't like his stuff. We brought him in live in Adobe Connect. They liked everything. He's very engaging in a synchronous way. So guest speaker quotes, expert Q&A. Having students read something from someone, then bring them in for a Q&A to discuss their research. Bring them in to talk about something. Interactive maps. Here we've got an interactive map showing immigration in the US, showing changes in diversity in the US and how much between right now, how diverse this country was in 1960, the darker the blue, the more diverse, And as you can see over time, we're becoming a more diverse culture, in effect, here, a society across the US. And this is projecting out 20 years or 25 years from now, as you can see on the diversity map or index. Going back here, so you can see diversity 1960, 2010, 2060. Maps can engage your students. Here's a map of college degrees. So here's college degrees in 1970, and here's college degrees in 2008. Take a look at that again. The darker the map, the more college degrees by county. Maps can engage your learners, okay? There's also a Google Map Gallery where you can find maps of almost anything. You can find maps of, here we've got missing planes across the world. Here we've got Taiwan public nuisance distribution map. Just find polar bear maps. So here's a map of missing planes around the world. Maps can also look at deforestation. There's actually a new website called Global Forest Watch where you can see parts of the world that are being reforested or deforested. Maps can also show you who's signing up for a MOOC, what their gender is. The darker the green, the more females. Here you can see who's completing the classes. The darker image, the more people completing the class. Here we're looking at the education level of students. There are data visualization tools that MIT and Harvard have created to help us understand our students better. Challenge was number 9, having students being challenged on controversial issues like how can we get more women into STEM, how can we get more women into computer science. I have my students debate issues in my classes, and so here they're doing a point-counterpoint debate between behavioral theory and constructivist theory. My students are doing a school board meeting and a virtual debate. I'm going to skip that one. There's a controversial issue here about music. I just spoke to folks in Hong Kong about music, and apparently a tool called Auto-Tune will help you sound better even if you can't sing. And so in music, there's a big controversy as whether Auto-Tune should be used or not. Cher is very famous for a song she gave. Apparently it sold millions from Auto-Tune. There's Cher singing the invention that changed music forever. I'll skip this. Finally, number 10. My students write books and post them up to the web. We write joint books using a tool called Wikibooks from the people at Wikipedia. They have another website called Wikibooks. There's a website called BookRix where you can post up books that are mobile. So my students do final projects that become a joint class project book. My students might also do a mobile application. They might create a mobile app on the course to help the next year's students understand the course. My students might also do videos. They do video documentaries. My students do videos explaining the course, or they might do a video on something else. This student's from Italy. He did a video of how his family uses technology in my technology class. One of my students did a documentary of a class. I'll skip over. So these are the final ones. Guest speaker quotes, data visualization, issue challenges, designing video productions, ebooks, map trends. Oh, I didn't show you timeline. I'll show you timeline in part 2. So that's the TEC-VARIETY model. I've given you dozens of examples of how to use the TEC-VARIETY model. The book is free to download, share with your friends. Take it and use it however you want. It's time for a let's take a 15-minute break or so. I'll do part 2 when you all get back in here. I'll take one question before we go to break. Does anyone have a comment or a question they would like to ask me? Yeah.
In order to apply those things to one classroom,
yeah,
it needs a lot of prepared
okay.
space and time.
Yeah. Right.
How you can handle those things effectively.
Okay, 2 answers to that question. Number 1, don't do all this. Number 2, try 1 or 2 new things out a semester. I'm just showing you a lot you can use. I've used most of those things, not all. And then third, the book lists the degree of risk, time, and cost, remember. Look for the low time ideas. Look for the low risk ideas. So because you asked a question, you just won a book. So come on up and I'll sign a book for you. And I gave away a lot at this morning session. I was hoping to have more for this afternoon, but I'll have a book left for part 2, and I have a book here. And I'll hang around if you want to come up, ask a question. But how many are coming back to part 2? We'll see some of you. So take a break. If someone could find me some tea, hot tea, That'd be nice. I'm going to hang around in the room here, but thanks a lot, everyone.